I was running as if someone was chasing me. Or maybe I was running away from myself. I'm pretty sure you were running away from Himitsu. Afraid, somewhere deep inside, to accept Himitsu's offer. A shameful and immoral offer, by its very nature, is defeatist. Shameful, by its very nature, is defeatist and even criminal. I couldn't reciprocate, and I couldn't just change who I loved like they were gloves. If Kagome had left, that didn't mean I had the right to throw myself into the arms of the first girl I saw. Even if it was Himitsu. But that was the voice of my mind, and its opponent was instinct. It wasn't shouting or objecting, it just hid in the depths of the brain and nervous system, laughing quietly. As if saying, no matter how much you struggle, I'll still take what's mine. That's just evolution. And if one partner becomes unavailable, an animal goes searching for another. It was even more painful to feel like an animal blindly following its instincts. But in the end, instincts are what is responsible for our survival, the survival of the species as a whole. I stopped only when I reached my house. It was just how I'd left it, dark and lonely. Across from it was Himitsu's house, also with its lights off, but much more cozy and alive. I can always leave tomorrow morning, too. If, of course, nobody would come to visit me tonight. Of course, I couldn't know what Himitsu would do next. Would she tell her father she met me at the station? But somehow I really wanted to believe she'd do the right thing this time. I searched the cupboards but found nothing to eat. The fridge had stood empty for a while. I was hungry, but not hungry enough to go to a 24/7 convenience store. But on the upper shelf, behind some empty tin cans, which used to hold either grain or sugar, I found an open bottle of vodka. God damn it. A Russian vodka, with Russian text on the label. Apparently it had been there for a few years, but it was alcohol. It's not like the time would do it any harm. I held the bottle in my hands, carefully wiped the thick layer of dust off it, took out the glass, poured some vodka into it. The burning wave ran from my throat down to my stomach. It warmed me up, and I immediately felt better. Of course, as always, the alcohol couldn't solve my problems, but to a degree it did allow me to see life with fresh eyes, to notice not only the sharp edges and spikes, but the positives too. I desperately lacked support, a kind word and simple human touch. Perhaps Himitsu could have provided all that, but at that moment, agreeing to her offer seemed the worst kind of escapism possible. I didn't know how to bring Kagome back. I managed to leave Tokyo, and I was just sitting in my kitchen drinking vodka, waiting for God knows what. There's probably a solution to every problem, or rather, eventually there's no one left who the problem matters to, and so it resolves itself. If Kagome could get her life in order without me, she'd barely remember the pathetic loser she had to live with for a month in a tiny mining village. As for me, who cared how I felt? At this instant, I desperately wanted to find a higher meaning to life, to grasp the motives of Providence and the will of God. The more I thought about it, the more I realized the pointlessness of existence. In life, everything happens the way it does due to the combination of an infinite number of variables, and it was extremely difficult to accept that pointlessness, the impartiality of all that is. I couldn't blame my parents for dying. Couldn't blame Catherine for leaving me a year and a half ago. Couldn't blame Kobayashi Jun for putting his granddaughters and his business's well-being above other people's lives. I couldn't blame Kagome for how she treated me in the end. Damn it. Couldn't even really blame myself, because I simply didn't know what I could have done differently. How do you make everyone happy on their own without inflicting suffering on other people? I'd never been a hypocrite and wasn't trying to set my door in both worlds, unlike many of Kyosuke's manga protagonists. I knew that my relationship with Kagome would make Himitsu unhappy. I also knew that she'd been unhappy about my relationship with Catherine. But in the end, she had a father and a grandmother. She wasn't hunted by Kobayashi Corporation and the KGB. I felt sorry for Catherine too, but that pity was constantly mixed with the bitterness of resentment. By now, I realized clearly that we couldn't be together. By now? Jesus, I would hope so. For numerous reasons. But that understanding and the loss of hope it brought cut painfully into my heart, constantly reopening that same old, not yet completely healed wound. As for Kagome, I poured myself another glass and immediately noticed how beautifully the dim light from the lamp reflected on the surface of the liquid, clear like a little angel's tear. After all, we've always been great at making two things: vodka and tanks. I laughed loudly and immediately looked around cautiously as if someone was watching me. Why not, though? Maybe somewhere deep inside I was even expecting yet another visit from Marina. Expecting her to help, offer a solution. Or that Kagome would come back, apologize, and say that everything was going to be alright. With every gulp of vodka, those foolish dreams seemed more and more realistic, as if my colossus with feet of clay was being reinforced with support beams. Each sip brought me closer to a bright future. I was looking at the emptying bottle of terror, having convinced myself that my only salvation was in it. And if the vodka would run out, the bright world my drunk mind had created would collapse immediately. The most scary part was that I was completely unprepared to face reality, in which I'd be alone and of no use to anyone. But naturally, I eventually ran out of vodka, and with it ended my dreams of happiness. I suddenly felt that my house had become truly cold, but I had neither the energy nor desire to turn on the heating. The cold and alcohol quickly made me sleepy. It took a great effort to reach my bed. Alright, where the hell do we go from here? What's your plan, my guy? What's next? There's no one greeting us in the morning. I woke up in that terrible state where you feel fine only so long as you're lying horizontal. I have been there. The moment you try to get up, before even thinking of anything more complex, you're overcome with dizziness. The only good thing was that I hadn't drank enough for a real hangover, so my condition would improve after a couple hours. And another one, my thoughts from the previous evening didn't return right away. The empty bottle of vodka stood on the table in the kitchen. I poured some water into a glass, drank it one go, and winced at how cold it was. I had no plans, neither for today, nor at all, except for running away from Tokyo and never looking back. But now it seemed like I'd always have the time for that. The hangover numbed all my emotions, including anxiety, which itself was strange. I fidgeted with the empty bottle, trying to figure out whether I should go to a store for another. Who the hell is it? I staggered to the phone, vaguely attempting to figure out who would be calling me on the way. Even if it was Ellie, Kyosuke, or Rina, all of that seemed to be completely irrelevant. And what if it was Kagome? Hello? I must have gotten the wrong number. I heard Catherine's voice on the other end. No, you haven't. What does she want from me? What does she want from me at this exact moment? I was curious about that too. That's like the last person I expect. Honestly, though, with Ellie making a reappearance, Himitsu making several reappearances, I did expect Catherine to pop up somewhere. I was fully expecting it at some point, so I can't say I'm too surprised. Are you okay? Never better. What do you want? Let's talk another time. No, wait, sorry. Gave myself a couple of good slaps in the face to come to my senses. I'm just in a bad mood this morning. Didn't sleep well and all that. Doesn't seem like it. I swear on my heart. Are you sure I'm not distracting you from something important? I can almost hear her smirk. What's so important I could be doing on a... What day is it today? You know me. I used to think I did. And now? Catherine just sighed, didn't reply. Really didn't expect a call from you. Especially after everything that happened. What happened with you? She asked nonchalantly. With me? Well, then did I realize that Catherine didn't know what had been going on in my life for the last few months. So much that I possibly couldn't summarize it in just a few words. Is that so? She replied with a somewhat forced indifference. Well, so what did you want? I tried to hide my irritation. It's just that we haven't talked in a while. And you haven't been to school for a while. I haven't been to school for a while. I grinned. Don't you know what kind of rumors have been circulating there about me and Iwamura? I do. She replied imperturbably. Well, so? Silence. I'd like to think you don't believe all that. Do you want to talk about this? With who? A psychologist? Thanks, but no thanks. With me. Ah, with you. Just like that? Just a second ago, all I could think about was how my life had gone so wrong. So what exactly do you want to talk about? I'm not forcing you. She replied briefly. No, of course not. Let's meet up in the city center in 2 hours, and don't be late. Affirmative. I hung up and sunk heavily to the floor. What if my life was going to take an unimaginable turn and I would lose Kagome just to get Catherine back? Maybe I'd fly with her to the US where the corporation could never find us. Was I seriously considering the possibility? Absolutely not. Especially after thinking yesterday that nothing could have worked out between me and Catherine. It was somehow too quiet at home, and also outside. I was just sitting in the hall and staring at the wall across from me, occasionally glancing at the clock. I didn't want to go to the meeting earlier than Catherine, and just stand there and wait like an idiot. For once I'd show her that I wasn't the one who needed it most. I heard the sound of a car engine nearby. Looked out the window. It was Himitsu's father, Ryunosuke-san. Fortunately, he couldn't see me. I barely remembered Himitsu's mother, but it always surprised me how they'd ever managed to get together. If I had to describe Ryunosuke-san, he was a typical Japanese man? Maybe even a bit too typical if you ask me. A respected government employee and an almost exemplary head of the family. was a wonder that Himitsu hadn't grown into some sort of Yamato Nadeshiko under his care. Well, now it's time. I stood up with some effort, put on my shoes, and walked outside. The cold November sun was unbearably blinding to my eyes and my head, although the headache had passed, seemed to be swelling from the inside. God, when would I feel normal again? No. People on the street cast weird looks at me, and I was almost certain they were judging my antisocial behavior and appearance that dishonored the proud title of human being. Of course, that wasn't the case. Maybe my face was a little swollen, but I didn't reek of alcohol, and I didn't wobble as I walked. No matter how hard I tried to get there on time, the clock on the office building told me I was 20 minutes early. City Center. Monday. I expected that there would be a lot of people, but not this many. Hi. I turned around and saw Catherine. You're early. So are you. But it's normal for me. So what did you want to talk about? She looked like she'd been dragged along on a boring field trip. Both the meeting and her morning call seemed strange to me. Though acting weirdly was normal for her. I'm leaving soon. Leaving? Yes, back to the US. What about Michael? What about him? Oh, I heard you two went on a date. She fixed her hair with a light gesture and turned away as if looking for something on the other side of the street. This whole conversation seemed like a forced formality. My hangover and other serious personal, criminal, and existential difficulties prevented me from understanding what I was supposed to be feeling and doing at this moment. So you've come to say goodbye? Something like that. Won't you even ask me how I've been all this time, where I was and what happened? I laughed sincerely. You know, the fact that I was home when you called it was itself incredibly lucky. Because I was also going to leave Tokyo. Indefinitely. Oh, is that so? Yes, it is. With that girl, Iwamura? Yes, with her. I blurted out, but immediately caught myself. Well, good luck to you two then. Is that all? What else is there to say? Catherine finally looked at me. Her face was still like a wax mask, and I could see poorly hidden sorrow in her eyes. But I didn't know how to react. I didn't know whether I even wanted to say anything. If that's what you've decided? Yes, good luck to you. Maybe we'll see each other again one day. Bye. I forced out farewell and then stood there for a while watching her leave. Damn, that's it? Like, this whole, this whole, reappearance of Catherine is just for her to say, I'm leaving. Okay, see ya, bitch. But now I'm standing in the city center in front of the Kobayashi building. Life, you might say, is like a chain. It spins and spins and spins, occasionally losing its links. Sometimes you notice it, if the links is important to you, and sometimes you just realize at one moment that the chain has become shorter than before. I could clearly hear a rattle, clang, and crunch after Catherine left. I could see the sparks all around me and smell the burnt metal. The chain continued its merciless rotation, just now a little shorter. But the coincidences are indeed absolutely indifferent. They can be good or evil to whoever they come upon. I was about to leave when I noticed a black foreign car right at the entrance of the Kobayashi Corporation building. As if there was anything unusual about it, but I still stopped to see what bigwig it was this time. First few bodyguards in dark suits exited the car. They carefully, meticulously examined their surroundings, then one of them opened the door and I saw Kagome. From this far away it was hard to see the expression on her face, but that wasn't necessary anyway. The impulse worked ahead of thoughts. There's a theory that consciousness is just an intricate attempt of the primate brain to rationalize the working of the much more ancient structures of the nervous system. Kagome! I shouted while running. Tokyo's business district was too loud on a Monday morning, and my voice was lost on the sound of car horns and people talking. Kagome! I gasped. It wasn't that easy to cross the road. The nearest pedestrian crossing was 100 meters away, and meanwhile the guards brought Kagome into the building. I ran straight ahead and almost got run over by a car. Once. Twice. Nobody wanted to give way to a kid trying to cross the road without any regard for traffic laws. But finally, having slid over the hood of a car that slowed down for me, I ran into the corporation's offices. Oh god. Kagome! It's much quieter in here compared to the outside. And Kagome and her guards had already reached the turnstiles. Kagome, wait! Finally she heard me and turned around. There was so much sadness, pain, and pleading in her eyes that I immediately forgot about all the theories I'd come up with not so long ago. No. She couldn't have willingly abandoned me and just forgotten everything that had happened between us. I didn't know what sequence of events had brought us to this point in time and space, but her eyes told me everything. We were separated only by a few dozen meters, but she may as well have been on the other side of the planet. Nico. Kagome tried to shout, but one of the guards grabbed her roughly and all but threw her over the turnstile. Kagome! When I ran to the turnstiles, it was too late. Kagome had been carried away, and the only person left to welcome me was a goon twice my size. It's pointless to argue with people like that or try to prove anything to them. I was feverishly looking around, seeking support. A few girls hanging at the reception desk, not busy with anything, looked at me in surprise. A few visitors were exchanging confused looks. Tell your boss this isn't over yet. I growled and ran for the exit. It was too dangerous to stay here any longer. At worst, they could capture me right there in the middle of the day, bring me to some forest and bury me there alive. Yeah, imagine, right? I had to collect my thoughts and come up with a plan. Now I was at least confident that I had a chance. Kagome had given it to me herself. My heart was beating like crazy. Drops of sweat were running down my face, and everything floated before my eyes. I wasn't in the best condition to think of a plan to assault the headquarters of the biggest corporation in Japan. I sank heavily onto a bench and tried to catch my breath. They must be expecting me there now, that's for sure. Thanks to Catherine, I suddenly thought. Indeed, if it hadn't been for her, I would have been far away from Tokyo, carried away by a train, mindlessly staring out at the countryside. I figured that's the whole point of Catherine dragging us out to the city center. Whether it was intentional on her part or not, like, the moment she said, meet me at the city center, I was like, okay, yeah, no, there's gonna be something to do with the Kobayashi building. But not that much had changed, really. All I learned was that Kagome was effectively being held hostage by Kobayashi Jun. He clearly knew best what was good for his granddaughters. How was I, a simple high schooler, who only yesterday had been drowning in vodka and depression, supposed to stand up to the might of the Kobayashi Corporation? Nevertheless, deep down inside, a warm, pleasant feeling had already appeared, began to take root in my soul, and spread further through my body with every passing second. Its source was Kagome's face with the plea for me written on it, her eyes wet with tears that were louder than any words. And even if I had only a 1 in a million shot to rescue her, that was enough. But in addition to my desperate desire, I also needed a plan. Suddenly I started remembering scenes from the all-American movies I'd watched in my life. Blow up the Kobayashi Corporation building? If I had any explosives, I would have done it. Although, wait, Kagome was in there. In any case, I had to somehow get in past the security guards. If I couldn't blow up the building, I could at least threaten to. Jesus Christ. And then in all the panic, maybe I'd manage to find her. Quickly located a payphone, but I couldn't summon the courage to grab the receiver and dial the number. My hands were shaking and it felt as if someone had put my head in a vice and was crushing it. Though I soon realized I didn't even know the number. Operator. Of course, getting the number of Kobayashi Corporation ended up being much easier than looking for some Akira Shinji guy who owned a restaurant. I memorized the number given to me by the girl with the pleasant voice, hung up, and I froze. It was clear what I had to say, but not how. I couldn't just blurt out that there was a bomb planted in the building. Who was I and why would they believe me? If that worked, every idiot would call them a dozen times a day. In the end, it would be a prank call. The police would probably get involved too. Although they probably had more than enough questions for me as is. I caught my breath and finally grabbed the receiver, dialed the number, covering the receiver with my hand to distort my voice at least a little. Hello. This is the Corporat. I gotta imitate him.
Hello. This is the Kobayashi Corporation.
The girl just as nice as the last said on the other end.
In your main office. I mean, in the building with your main office.
In my mind, I was already beating myself up.
The explosion is in an hour. I advise you to evacuate everybody.
What kind of terrorist would advise an evacuation of his potential victims? I couldn't handle the shame and was about to hang up, but the girl on the other end replied in a cold, uncompromising voice. Is this some kind of joke? Who are you? Identify yourself. That was when I realized that my plan had failed. Indeed, why would they believe every idiot who decided to prank them? After all, we were in Japan out of all countries. Maybe once the cyberpunk dystopia finally rolled around, they'd take this sort of threat more seriously, but now? Blowing up a building in the center of Tokyo, few people were capable of that. And the ones who could definitely wouldn't warn anyone in advance. I walked out of the telephone box, looked around. The business district kept living its own busy life. The secretary, or whoever she was, hadn't taken me seriously, so I didn't have to worry about the police. Powerless, I sank to the nearest bench and put my head in my hands. When you face failure, disaster, your entire world comes apart at the seams. Your very perception of reality becomes distorted. There's no black and white anymore. There's only black. And all the good things that were ever in your life look like a discolored children's picture book, and that's at best. Not that I had anything good in the first place. To be frank, I was in deep shit. I only had to wait for someone to knock from the bottom. Then something unexpected happened. Could you tell me where the offices of Kobayashi Corporation are? I raised my head. A young man was wearing a uniform and a baseball cap with the logo of a logistics company stood in front of me. Perfect. Wow. We're really doing this, huh? We're really gonna infiltrate. He had a strong Chinese accent. Yeah, see, here's the thing, Nico. I don't think you'd pass for a Chinese man. Call me a doubter, but I don't see it happening. But the most surprising thing was that he was asking for directions while standing across from the Kobayashi Corporation's offices. That's when I got an idea. It was just as wild as the bomb call, but perhaps slightly more realistic. Want to make a bit of extra cash? What do I have to do? The Chinese guy didn't even hesitate for the sake of decency. His eyes immediately lit up. What do you deliver? Paper clips, that kind of stuff. There's my car. He gestured toward the sidewalk, where a little truck was parked. I'll give you... Took out a wallet and counted the money. Madoka-san sure hadn't held back. This much. If you lend me your jacket, your hat, and a couple of boxes of the stuff you're delivering. What do you need it for? Now I finally showed suspicion. Doesn't matter. I waved a wallet full of cash in front of him. This guy's internal conflict ended fairly swiftly. I have spare uniforms in the car. His lips stretched to an idiotic smile. Great, that's even better. Then I'll give you half now and half in the elevator once we're inside. Deal. Okay. We really doing this. The jacket was too small for me, as expected, but I still managed to fit into it somehow, although it must have looked weird. Although the two huge but surprisingly light boxes allowed me to hide well from the inquiring glances. Yeah, wasn't this guy who was just in here yelling for some girl? When we entered the corporation's building, I asked the Chinese guy, "You know what you're doing, right? Just follow me." He walked to reception, gave the girl there a clipboard with some papers, and said something. I wasn't listening to him, but instead carefully looked over the boxes, watching for those guards in dark suits, or God forbid it, Kagome. But this time I seemed to be in luck. None of the people on the first floor of the Kobayashi Corporation building were paying any attention to me. Finally, the guy who was done with the paperwork carefully poked me in the back. Follow me, but don't run. When we approached the turnstiles, the guy nodded to the man standing next to the farthest of them, and he let us pass without saying a word. Was I already halfway there? I was rejoicing internally, and had to struggle to keep my face straight. Before we entered the building, we agreed that I'd go up as high as possible in the elevator, and then go our separate ways. The wait for the elevator to arrive was painfully long. Or maybe the seconds seemed like hours just to me. I could feel my hair get sweaty under the baseball cap. The tight jacket restricted any movements, and the boxes that had seemed light a minute ago weighed my arms down. You're not planning anything bad, are you? Since when have you started using casual Japanese? No, actually. You might instead call what I'm doing noble. I barely managed to reply. People doing something noble don't sneak around. Do you want the rest of the money or not? I grew angry. Fine, I'm silent. His expression grew dark and he lowered his head. Naturally, I hadn't planned anything beyond this. I could run into Kagome at Kobayashi Jun's office. The old man himself could be somewhere else. There were millions of other possible outcomes, and only one of them was in my favor. That was if he even decided to hear me out. And if I wouldn't be that lucky, in the best case, they'd just kick me out again, then I'd end up not just alone, but also without any money, with it all being in some Chinese guy's pockets. I gave the guy a hateful glance, but really, what had he done wrong? He was just as much of a foreigner in Japan as I was. In many senses, he probably had it harder than I. Trust me, I'm not going to do anything bad, I slowly said in a rush of goodwill. I need to get somewhere and talk to someone. I just hope he'll listen to me and understand. My job is to accompany you to whatever floor you want to get to. That's all. After that, we're strangers. The Chinese guy replied in an unexpectedly rough tone. True, you're right. I'd be too quick to see him as an ally. Like most people, he was only taking the risk for money. Not out of love for those around him. Look who's talking, though. Finally, the elevator arrived.